Um, so, my thoughts on teaching vocals. What does it take to be a good voice teacher or a vocal coach? What skills and what knowledge is required, and what is expected of you as a teacher, and what should you as a student expect from a teacher? Do you have to have a degree? Do you have to know how to play the piano, or do you even need to be able to sing yourself? I will tell you my thoughts on this, and they are just that. They're my rambling thoughts about it here and now. I might change my mind tomorrow. Who knows? And you may or may not agree, and honestly, I don't care if you do. I just hope that this might be interesting for some and perhaps helpful for others. I will specifically talk about one-on-one singing lessons with adult or older teenage students here, since that is what I primarily do. Those thoughts and opinions may or may not be applicable if you, for example, conduct a choir or teach music to kids. And that's, by the way, the most important job in the world. But why am I such an awesome teacher? I'll let you know. Being creative and working creatively is scary. And having a voice lesson can be very scary. And that's why I first and foremost because I'm responsible for it, that's why I have to create a safe space for my student. A situation and a place where everything goes, and where there are no rules or fear of not succeeding. And I, the teacher, must always make sure that the student leaves the lesson feeling better than when it started. And not just musically, but the student should feel happy at the end of a lesson. And believe me, having a teacher and a lesson that makes you feel good is more important than having a lesson that overwhelms you with terminology, that is way over your head, listening to examples from a teacher that is clearly outdoing you vocally. There are certain branches of leadership, instructions, and pedagogy that advocates that kind of leadership. But having a vocal instructor doing that doesn't make you a better singer. It just makes you feel bad. And yes, for some it might be inspiring to have a teacher showing you awesome stuff that you can't do. And for some that might be inspirational and makes you want to work harder or whatever, but not for everyone. And I, the teacher, once again, I must know the difference. And that brings us to that's like the first thing that you have to be able to do if you're a teacher. But now for the second thing, if you're a teacher, you need to understand people. And that means that you need to want to understand people. And this boils down in a will and desire to adapt to situations, and a will and desire to understand how people work and function in order to be a better teacher. As a teacher, you can never go like my way or the highway. A teacher needs to be more like, if you want to walk and travel a road less traveled, I will join you and I will walk beside you. And if you want to go racing down the highway at midnight, I will sit in the passenger seat and tell you when to slow down. And understanding people and students, that demands some basic knowledge in psychology and pedagogy. And this can be achieved in many different ways, either by studying it formally or by trial and error. But just bear in mind that the error part of trial and error might be a real bad experience for your potential students. So yeah, those are really important stuff. But there are, of course, other skills. other than being somewhat compassionate and understanding people and their needs. Breaking it down, I've come up with a couple of skills that are crucial if you want to teach vocals. And having awesome ears is number one. And I'm not talking about pitch here, but sound. A voice teacher must have the ability to hear small nuances, differences, anomalies, and resonances in a voice. I myself have an inner picture of every voice I hear. It's kind of hard to explain, but when you sing to me, I do not only hear your voice, I kind of see it too. I visualize it. And my brain interprets the information that my ears are receiving and translates it. So yeah, that's for the ears. That brings us to the next skill. Being able to feel this information in your own body. And I'm sure that many of you watching, if you see someone, I don't know, stepping on a Lego or encounter other kinds of painful shit, either in real life or you see it in a movie, you can feel that pain. This is because of it's called mirror neurons in our brains that, you know, if we see someone who's in pain, we kind of feel that pain. It's a part of having basic empathy too. But yeah, I kind of do the exact same thing with vocals. When I hear someone sing, after I get that inner image, I kind of feel the voice in my own body, or the imaginary body that I'm creating here in my mind. I can feel where it resonates. I can feel where it hurts. I can feel it if it's closed up, or if there is any tension. And people who are good at this are often good at, you know, imitating others, both physically and vocally, but imitating sounds and making funny voices and all that kind of stuff. And this is closely connected to the singing skill, singing in your mind, that my students and those who have attended my master classes have heard a lot about. But we save that for another time. So those are two. Third is not a skill, but more knowledge. In this case, anatomical knowledge. And I'm not talking terminology here, but raw anatomy. When I say that I feel your voice, I need to understand and know what causes that specific sensation and sound in the body. The position of the tongue, or the tension in your throat, or the lack of activity in the neck, or the way you move your jaw, or whatever. And I cannot stress this enough, that this is not knowledge that is required to sing. This anatomy knowledge. No one sings better just by knowing what the inside of a larynx looks like. But I, the teacher, I have to know it. Because I need it when we talk about the next skill that is needed. I think this was the third skill. The fourth, explaining. We all know that it can be very hard to explain stuff, to explain something to another person. And our gut reaction then is to think that the other person is an idiot. And they might be, but when you're a teacher, you can't afford that luxury of thinking that the recipient of what you're saying is an idiot. That makes you the idiot. Your job is making that idiot understand in a way that works best for them. And this is pedagogy. And it is a vast field of knowledge. We normal people can never dream of being all-knowing in this field, but we can all be better than we are now. So learning how to explain things in different ways is also crucial for a teacher. What works in one group or with one individual might not work for another. And this skill is both learned in theory and in practice, and we are never fully trained in it. So yeah, basically, in my opinion, these are the most important skills to have as a voice teacher or vocal coach. Having good ears, having the ability to imagine, sense, and feel what it is that is, to sense that, to sense the voice of the other person, to imagine it. Third, knowledge, anatomical knowledge, and then the fourth, the ability to explain to the student what to do. So those are the four basic cornerstone skills and knowledges that you need to be a good vocal coach. And that brings us to a bunch of secondary skills and knowledges that can be useful when you teach vocals. And first of them is singing. Yes, singing is a secondary skill when you teach vocals, at least in my opinion. Don't you need to be able to sing to be a voice teacher? Yes and no. You need, of course, be able to sing decently yourself, but I know I've said this before, and I will say it again and again and again. Being a great singer does not make you a great teacher. It doesn't automatically make you a good teacher. You can be both, but they are not automatically connected. Sometimes when I teach, I do not sing at all, and sometimes I sing a lot. It depends on the student. Some students need to find their own voice, and then my voice is just in the way. And other students need that audible example, and then try to replicate it in their own voice. So my ability to sing whatever it is I'm teaching is a secondary skill. Another secondary skill is terminology. And just to get one thing straight, there is no consensus in vocal terminology, and when it comes to singing. I mean, there is medical voice box terminology that is correct, but when it comes to singing, there are literally hundreds of schools and ways to describe what it is we're doing, and none of them are right and none of them are wrong. It is like different languages. But never forget that terminology is just a tool. It is made up words to help us explain things better. And the moment you start to put terminology before listening when you teach, then you're on the wrong path. Terminology is not rules. It is a way to explain, as we talked about earlier. But as a voice teacher, it's good to have a nice grasp on terminology, because a student might come to you using a certain set of specialized words for certain going-ons in the voice. And it may speed up your understanding of what a student is saying and the student's situation if you know a bit of the terminology that he or she is using. But, and this is important shit, if you spend more time teaching words to your student than you are actually spending time teaching them to sing, then I would advise you to think again. Do not teach terminology over singing. Next secondary skill, musicality. Should go without saying, but no. We have four that are more important than musicality. Since your students will be doing music, it is a good thing to have a bit of musicality yourself. Any musical skill that you can acquire will help you in your job as a voice teacher. And no, you don't have to be a piano virtuoso to be a vocal coach. But finding your way around a piano, demonstrating a melody, basic accompaniment, and perhaps playing some exercises that you will probably need. I have teacher friends on all level of piano playing, stretching from super basic beginners to really, really good piano players. And in no way is their level of piano playing the primary skill that defines if they are great voice teachers or not. I think I'll say that again. In no way is your level of piano playing the primary skill that defines if you're a great vocal teacher or not. Same thing with musical theory and all the associated terminology. Being able to read music and understand the cornerstones of music theory will eventually help you if you start learning it. There are teachers out there who can receive a piece of sheet music from a student, read it a prima vista, and play it decently at first try. And this is not necessary or a crucial skill. But it might be better than telling the student that maybe we scrolling and trying to find a backing track, or postponing the moment of teaching until next week after you've had the time to practice. Maybe the feeling is gone. Maybe that window of opportunity, that moment of joy that the student had will be gone. But of course, there are voice teachers who can't read any music, who don't know any music theory at all, and they're doing just fine, because this is a secondary skill. We have the other four. We have the ears, the sensation and the imaginary knowledge, and the anatomical knowledge, and the ability to explain, that are so much more important. Another secondary skill that is important is to have an open musical mind. You are of course allowed to have your own personal taste in music, but when you teach, you are a professional. No chef would ever deny to cook minestrone or a ribeye steak based on the fact that they do not like it. Don't be a pompous, devaluating musical asshole. Or you can be, but don't be that when you teach. Don't talk down on certain kinds of music in front of your students, especially not music that they enjoy. Have an open mind and realize that you might need to nudge your own preferences if you wish to teach. But of course, if you, for example, are a voice teacher at the Academy of Music, specializing in Baroque interpretation, and that is your sole purpose of being there, then that is your field, and that is what your students will expect of you. They don't expect you to deliver anything else. That's why they come to you, and that is what you expect to teach them. That's a completely different thing. But if you, like me, are a regular teacher, be prepared to sacrifice your own musical preferences. And by the way, one teacher I had, actually at the Academy of Music, specializing in classical vocals, she once asked me to bring some of that metal music that I was singing to my next lesson, because she wanted to hear me sing it. So we sang some Dream Theater together and some other stuff, and she loved it, and she showed so much interest in what I was doing. Such enthusiasm and pure musical joy over the fact that I loved singing this kind of music. Anna-Lena, her name, she is a true inspiration to me when it comes, not only when it comes to this, but she will always be. Another secondary skill, pronunciation, no, technology. Basic knowledge of microphones, PA systems, recording gear, and DAWs and the like. It is not primary knowledge to acquire, but it is a good one to have. And knowing your way around the studio and how things go down might help you to prepare a student for a recording session. And one more secondary skill, having some knowledge in business and the scene or whatever. Being able to answer questions when it comes to career choices and stuff like that. But I want to make this very clear. Don't pretend to be an agent or something like that. Don't give advice about things that you don't know anything about. I mean, or if you do, make sure that the student knows that you don't know what you're talking about, and instead just coach the student into making their own decisions. Don't give musical theater auditions advices if you never been to one, or don't pretend to understand the New York jazz scene and who's who in it if you're a Spanish metal singer. I think you all know what I mean. Don't talk about shit you don't know like if you knew it, or as if you knew it. I could go on like forever with this, but kind of wrapping it up a bit. As a voice teacher, you need to 1. Understand people. 2. Have good ears and a good sensory knowledge skill. 3. Have anatomical knowledge. 4. Be good at explaining things. Some secondary skills include singing, yes, terminology, musicality, an open musical mind, technology, and some business knowledge. Did I miss anything? Or is it something that should be on the list? Let me know in the comments. In my opinion, voice teaching has been over-theoreticized. Just like many other things in this day and age. And I probably get 10 grandpa points for saying that phrase. But I think it's a dangerous thing to do, to spend too much time on categorizing, thinking up names, almost competing in terminology. It is the wrong focus to have. We watch vocal coach reacts videos for hours and hours, and vocal instructional videos containing super long explanations for stuff that might not even concern you or might not even apply to you in any way. And we are tricked into thinking that these things are universal and that they apply to you. But they might not do that. Or to be safe, maybe you should just say that they are not. If that is your basic instinct, maybe you're closer to the truth. I dare say that one-way communication in teaching kind of sucks. And I don't even feel like delving deeper into why right now. Those 4 cornerstones that I talked about, or 5 depending on how you count, there are skills and knowledges that are hard to learn, and it takes time. They're mostly hard because it takes time, and because there is no 12-step program on how to learn them. And we humans tend to like structure, and we get easily scared of things that are not structured and cannot be taught or learned in system. We want to have the matrix kind of, I know Kung Fu. And that's why these 4 crucial things might be overlooked. Because as we all know, it's easier to do trivial things that are urgent than it is to do important things that are not urgent, like thinking or learning a hard skill. And it's also easier to do little things that we know that we can do than to start on big things that we are not so sure about. That's why we tend to rearrange things on the desk, or cleaning the studio, or scroll on social media instead of starting to work on that song, or writing that lyric or whatever it is, whatever that kind of hard thing that we have in front of us is. Because in order to get creative, we need to power through that unpleasant sensation of fear of that big thing in front of us. So my advice is practice to being safely, uncomfortably afraid. Just stay in that feeling and live through it, and don't succumb into arranging your paper clips or sorting your socks according to color or cleaning or calling a friend. Patience is key. It might be tempting to spend time learning phrases, fancy words and terminology, describing stuff, describing what's going on inside of the voice. But it might not be as appealing to just sit still, listening to a voice, practicing how to feel it inside of you, just living in that moment, not learning anything, but practicing a skill. And it's so much harder to train a skill than to acquire knowledge, because it takes time and it's not as noticeable. If you learned a couple of fancy words, then you can trick yourself that you learned something. But if you have just been sitting around listening to voices, did you really learn something? And I say yes, you definitely did. Does a question that will never be answered and that never will be stopped being discussed is, does it take a degree to be a voice teacher? No, of course it doesn't. Voice teacher or vocal coach or whatever you want to call it, it's not a protected title. Everyone can call themselves that without breaking any law or anything. The difference, according to me at least, is that those who have an actual degree in teaching vocals and not a degree in singing, that is something completely different. Those who have a degree, they should be good at teaching vocals. They have been trained to do it, while those who do not have a teaching degree, they could be good at teaching vocals. I want to point out that I have friends from both sides of the fence, and very good teacher friends from both sides of the fence, from both fields, and a degree doesn't automatically turn you into a great teacher either, at least not immediately, but there is a chance that you might just be one. In my training and my education, I had training students that I taught while I was having a very experienced teacher sitting by and watching. Super weird situation, to say the least. And I had to go through the sometimes embarrassing process of discussing the lesson in detail afterwards, both with the student and with my teacher, the experienced teacher. And now, many years later, I've had some aspiring teachers, those who study to become vocal coaches. I've had them on their training program at work, and sometimes for 5 weeks and sometimes for 10 weeks, and it is also an amazing learning experience for me, and I hope that it has been for the students who had to live through 10 weeks of watching them teach. And if any of you are watching this, you're all awesome. So yeah, I wrapped it up before I finished talking, but I'll say it again because repeating things might be good for your learning. So I've been told. The 4 cornerstones of teaching vocals, according to me, is understand people, have good ears and a good sense of body sense and a good imagination, have anatomical knowledge, and be good at explaining things. And once again, the secondary skills: singing, terminology, musicality, an open musical mind, technology, and business. That's me once again wrapping it up. I've been talking for some time now, and I feel that I could either work myself into a frenzy here or kind of stop. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I believe I'll be taking your questions now. No, but seriously, if you have any questions, either ask them now live, or I'll probably be posting this later. Put it in the comments, and I'll try to answer as good as I can. And after that, I will be starting some recording here in my studio. So I'll give it a minute, and if not, see ya.